Recently, I've been having a lot of different conversations with individuals who were looking for more meaning, more explanation behind how they can get things moving, how they can understand their why or what they wanted to do in life. It's a difficult question. I've been there myself because obviously, in order for you to have some level of direction, you've had to have gone through the whole process of working out, what do I actually want to do? I was speaking to a really cool individual yesterday, and he was basically telling me that he feels like he's at ground zero. And really, he wanted to get some level of encouragement or motivational insights around how he can get going. And I gave him a varied response, but essentially, I started off by saying that context is key. What do I mean by this? Context for me is centered around my background. It's important for me to understand what were the roots, what was the upbringing, what were the conditions that my parents were in, whether they're here or not. So understanding their struggles, understanding their successes, understanding their culture, understanding their background is so crucial because it's the very reason why I'm here. So context is really important for me when it comes to this stuff. And so when I have that sense, I get a deeper sense of meaning. And with that deeper sense of meaning, it means that I can do things for longer. I have a certain zest or passion because I'm fighting for a cause. I always say commit to a cause. What is commitment? Commitment is the very thing that allows you to stay disciplined along to something. And the cause is something that is heart-rendered. It resonates with you. Now, this doesn't necessarily make sense for everyone. But I guess what I'm trying to say is your context gives you a sense of direction, so to speak, because you know the struggles that, again, maybe your parents, siblings, family members, friends have gone through. And so it gives you a strong idea of what you don't want to achieve, what you don't want to do. Sometimes it's the very darkness that allows you to understand the light that you need to be heading towards. So understand what it is or the story that shapes you as a person, and typically that is heavily dependent upon some of your background. Now, some of you may not even necessarily identify with that stuff, or it may not make sense, or it may be too deep for you. Deep is okay. It's okay for us to be deep. But with that in mind, you'll have your story. What does your story look like? And I speak about this in my book, Understand, Reach, Expand, 15 Super Effective Ways to Manage Your Mind. It's the first book of the Understand, Reach, Expand series. That's why I always say Understand, Reach, Expand at the end of my videos. It's because it was my original and first philosophy. And so in that book, I talk about this whole thing of an experience magnifier, okay? All this really is looking at the last 2, 3, 5, 10 years, maybe even 15, 20 years, and picking out hallmark experiences and describing what those experiences were. But more importantly, who was there and what lessons did you learn? And in those lessons, what values did you adopt? What are values? Values are the very thing that you deem as important. So if you say trustworthiness is important, or integrity is important, or security or ambition, these are things that you deem as important, whether they're core values, means values, end values, whatever they may be. They need to resonate with you. I asked the same person yesterday. I was like, okay, cool. I think you really need to focus on establishing what your values look like. And I said to him, if I was to ask you, what does good friendship look like to you? What would you say? And he listed off all this stuff. And I'm using this as an example. Respectful, trustworthiness, motivational by nature. And I let him say what he had to say. And then I proceeded by saying, those very things that you said that you needed in a friend is the same thing that you were saying you need for yourself. And if you're not giving yourself this stuff, you need to ask yourself why. What are the blockers? Maybe it's the environment. Maybe it's people. Maybe there's an experience that you haven't let go of, you haven't accepted that has happened, that is holding you back. So there's some deep work sometimes that needs to be done. Maybe it does require you to get therapy, or maybe it does require you to get a coach and or mentor. But whether it requires that stuff or not, start to think about, what is your context, what is my story, and what are my values? That's a really, really important sort of like process, CSV, I guess. So moving on from that, you then want to get into a space of reflection. Now, there is this model in psychology. I've forgotten the actual name for it, but I got learnt this, or taught this, should I say, when I was practicing my coach training. And essentially, imagine there's like an axis. I don't know if I'm doing it the right way. And on the bottom, you've got, you've got sort of like a certain type of like movement or energy. Okay. And on the y-axis, you've kind of got like years. Don't even know if I'm describing it right. Point being made is, when you start talking about different points in time, you're going to be really sort of like focusing on whether something gave you more energy or less energy, or whether you were very active or less active, etc., etc. Rather than energy, let's talk about activeness. Let's say you were more active, in your earlier years, it would go down. If you were less active, it would go up, etc., etc. Point being made is, when you have high levels of activeness, you're just busy, 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 busy. You're more prone to burnout. You feel like things are just long. You can't be bothered. All this kind of stuff there. This is where you're having what's known as I think it's an existential crisis. Okay. Things are just like, it's kind of like your quarter life crisis or your 30-year crisis or whatever it may be. Things are just too much for you. They're overwhelming. Things are just like, oh my gosh, I can't take it. But there are some people who they haven't got much to do. They're idle and they feel like they're actually useless or worthless. And this is where they have what's known as a crisis of duality. Okay. And so you want to get to a point where you're balancing between the two, and you're finding a harmonious spot or an aligned spot where you're taking enough action, but you're giving yourself enough time to reflect upon what's happening. And so it's about recognizing what state you're in. Over the last 5 years, over the last 10 years, have you been in an existential chronic crisis? Or have you been that person who's been in a crisis of duality? Which one has it been? Because whatever it is, you probably want to do the opposite now. And not necessarily go down this heavy train, but maybe sort of like give yourself an opportunity to try the other sort of side. And so when thinking about this stuff, you have to find ways to reflect. Sometimes reflection comes down to talking to your partner, or talking to your sibling, or talking to a close friend or family member, or even a work colleague. Okay, maybe not work colleague, but the point we made is, you're speaking to someone that you trust, okay, and that you can confide in. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing this is if you do some level of reflective writing, okay, or speaking. I'm a big advocate of reflective speaking. So again, I've mentioned this on the YouTube channel before. I've got this thing called Voice Notes app. I paid a one-off fee for it because I trusted and believed in the organization. And essentially, I just record my voice and it will transcribe everything and then use AI to do the rest, to give me summary notes, this, that, whatever it may be. If I want to throw that into ChatGPT or whatever it may be, I can do what I want with it. But the point being made is, even if I don't want to do all of that stuff, the process of just speaking my thoughts, and then if I want to, reading it back, is so powerful. It's clarifying by nature. I remember I started this, I think, a year or two ago. I would walk to church. It'd take me about half an hour. And essentially, I would record my thoughts. I remember the first time I did this, and things were just feeling so like overwhelming. And so I just said everything. I have this thing called the Pillars of Mastery, okay? And this really looks at progress. It looks at people. It looks at, what else is there? There's also performance, and there's also personal. So let's go through each one. So with progress, that's looking at portfolio careers. That's looking at business, and that's looking at finances. What do all of those areas look like? When it comes to performance, that's looking at nutritional health, physical health, and what I call spiritual health, which could be broken up into mental and emotional health, so to speak. There's also people. So this is looking at my significant other. It's looking at family, and it's looking at friends and community. And then when looking at the personal side, this is looking at home and maintenance, personal development, hobbies and activities, okay? Now, you could argue this is my version of the Wheel of Life, but I've broken it down in a way that makes sense for me. And so even in each of those areas, there's a framework that I've utilized that helps me. And this is why I developed something known as the Life Navigation System, which is a Notion template that helps you really sort of like understand and break down it. Like I've really broken it down. I'm actually looking to probably turn this into a journal at some point, but who knows? Maybe, shouldn't I? Who cares? We'll see what happens. But the point being made is speaking on that stuff for half an hour to church and then half an hour back gave me the space and freedom that I needed. Because I was moving, my brain was active, and because I was speaking, and you know, I like to speak obviously because I do YouTube and all that kind of stuff there, it felt natural to me. Nobody was around, nobody was judging me, whatever it may be. I was just saying what I need to say. For some of you, it's writing. I'm not gonna lie, I get lazy with writing these days. My hands start to ache, you know. So with that in mind, like for me, speaking is good. Some of you, it's typing and, you know, doing all this stuff. Whatever makes sense for you, find an opportunity to journal. Does it have to be every day? No. I've done the whole everyday thing. Back in 2023, I set myself a challenge when I did actually create this life navigation system thing. And I journaled every single day without fail. And in the beginning, it felt amazing. But after 60 days, the last 30 days just felt a bit long. So you have to go with what feels right. Okay, you have to go with what feels right. Okay, so journaling is a great way because what ends up happening is you start to recognize patterns in terms of what makes sense for you. You start to associate yourself with different themes. You give yourself the opportunity to feel the emotion that you need to feel. Okay, this is known as emotional regulation and emotional agility. And basically, rather than just say you feel X, you can label it and then define what you want to do based on your values. This is why starting with values is so important. I will come back to the point, by the way, of how you start to think about what you want to do. Because if you don't do this higher level stuff, it's going to be very difficult for you to have an idea of what you want. Because if we move on, when you start thinking about, again, number one, what your values are, your context is, and your story. And number two, you are doing some sort of reflective expression. Then the third thing is, and this stuff takes time, by the way, don't rush it. The third thing is you are trying to get to a space where you're starting to define who you want to become. Who do you want to become? Okay. I call this whole thing priming. This is the sort of like language I use for it. When you get into the whole priming space, you're basically allowing yourself to be in a state of recognition of how you see yourself, at least in the future, because your future self is your current self. You just haven't caught up with it. That's all it is. But you have to start to invoke some level of belief. When Tony Robbins talks about the success cycle, he mentions the fact that, you know, when you take action, there are results, and with results, there is belief. And with that belief, it invokes this potential. And so there is a cyclical sort of like element to it where even if the stuff is negative, it's still going to be cyclical by nature. So you have to think to yourself, who do you want to become as an individual? Start answering those questions. And so whether this is sort of like related to your career, your life, whatever it may be, it all kind of interlinks, okay? Because remember what I said in previous videos before, if you've been watching, a portfolio career is something that you create. This is why I've said before, start with who you want to become. It's not about doing loads of things all this time. No. It's about making sure you're clear about what that looks like. And you won't be crystal clear all the time. But what you can start to do is, you can start to look to see pockets of individuals who are doing things similar to what you think you want to do. And so you may want to reverse engineer stuff, okay? You want to collect information. You want to go on their websites. You want to speak to different individuals. No one's saying you need to start looking at, you know, super high flyers or whatever it may be. Or maybe you want to, who knows? I don't know where you're at in terms of your mindset or your career, whatever it may be. But see what is out there. And if what is out there is not exactly what exists, that's okay. I felt like that for a very long time. It's not going to exist perfectly. Because if you're a copycat or clone of someone else, then it's not authentic. And if it's not authentic, you're not sort of like aligning yourself to sincere living. You're getting influenced by external factors and natures and stuff. And then there's also this element of you feeling like you're not yourself. And when that stuff happens, it means that you can't deliver. You just can't. You can't achieve. You can't attach yourself to these different sub-personalities or egos that allow you to get to the next step. So it's important, it's incumbent of you to make sure that you're sincere to self. And so find examples, but then that's just to trigger ideas. Again, you can use things like ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, speak to it and all that kind of stuff there. And it can soothe your spirit and your soul. I was saying to this guy yesterday, like, there are times where there are things I want answered, and ChatGPT, I'll spend, okay, maybe not hours, but a lot, let's say 90 minutes just conversing back and forth with ChatGPT. And I'll do this again and again and again, same question, and I'll come to the point of realizing actually this is just a validation thing. So you looking at other people, stuff, whatever it may be, for the purpose of validating and understanding that it's possible to do a certain thing, or gives you ideas in terms of how you shape your thing, is important, but not for self-deprecation. We're not doing that. We're not doing that in 2025. We're not trying to make ourselves feel low or belittled or any of that stuff. And so you want to start doing this stuff. What I've done is I've done some sort of like digital vision board and put it on my phone so I can see it every single day. Okay. This invokes something in me. And so you can use something like Canva, Google Keep, whatever it may be. I think Adobe Illustrate or something like that, to put all of this stuff together, and then you can have your digital footprint. Following on from that is this idea of experimentation, okay? Because what I was talking about before was gaining some level of knowledge, okay? But this next stage is about experimentation. I believe, and I've said this for a very long time, life is one big fat experiment, okay? And it's your sort of like role to have hypotheses and see if they are true or not. And you just keep on experimenting. There are no real rules, including your own. There are consequences, don't get me wrong. But real rules, well, really that's defined based on what you align yourself to and the environments that you're in, or the things that you do repeatedly. So you have to have a certain level of what I call intelligent consistency. But we're not at that point yet. Let's focus on the experimentation. In the experimentation phase, you are seeing if some of the stuff that you've looked at and some of the information that you've garnered from your self-expression sort of like journey can be validated into something that is recognizable as some sort of portfolio career. So this is where, okay, you may have read books, you may have watched videos, you've taken notes, you know, you're doing all this stuff. You've got this theory of the world, or you've got this theory of what life should look like for you. You want to start testing this out. So maybe from a career standpoint, this is, okay, reshaping your CV and applying for certain things that are slightly out of depth. Maybe you have to be a bit more sort of like rogue with it, and you connect with different people, go to certain events, introduce yourself, let them know that you've done certain things. Maybe it's creating something, okay? Creating something that is so unique and so detailed and so inner that nobody else has done it before, to the point where if you put it in front of the people who would appreciate and admire this stuff, they're more likely want to sort of like take your services or bring you in as an individual. Like what are you willing to do? Like, this can't be a minute right society thing. You can't let your emotions get in the way. Emotions are great for helping us make decisions, but they can't dictate everything. You can't. So try different things. And what does that look like? It really means if you've given yourself, and I'm saying this as an arbitrary number, okay? It doesn't have to be this. But if you're giving yourself 90 days to try something, knowing that you've given yourself enough time to get a result, then that should tell you everything you need to know. Maybe you need 6 months, okay, to give yourself enough data. It's more about the data. How many times are you doing something to get the data that you need in order to inform a decision? You have to give something life and a chance to see if it works. And so we want to experiment. We want to try things. We want to volunteer. We want to speak to different people. This YouTube stuff that I'm doing, yeah, this is an experiment. I'm telling you right now, this is an experiment. I went to a BYP event, Black Young Professionals event, okay? And essentially I was speaking to loads of people, and they noticed previous videos I did on contracting and stuff. And so I was speaking to loads of people. But I was going through my own journey of trying to align and understand, how do I talk about what I think I want to talk about online? So it just came to me. I was just like, okay, I want to do a 30-day, at least, daily challenge on YouTube. That's what I said to myself. I'm probably going to talk about what I've learned, by the way, after the 30 days and whether I'm going to continue or not. And so I spoke to my virtual assistant, which, I'm grateful for and was able to procure back in October. And she was like, yep, sounds like a great idea. We worked together. And essentially, I had sort of like prompt bullet points that helped me just in case. And this is why I keep on looking this way, just in case. Do I follow the script? No. Does it give me sort of like something to reference and basically say, hey, I agree with that or I don't agree with it? Yes. And I can just say what I need to say. But this is all an experiment. This wasn't planned the way maybe potentially someone thinks it may have been planned. I'm using a phone, okay, connected to a mic. And I've got a mirror here that shows me whether the you know the camera is still rolling. I know I can use software and all this kind of stuff there, but I realized when I did use software before there was lag. I'm experimenting. This is all an experiment, I'm telling you. And so what is this going to tell me? Well, what has this told me so far? It's told me that there are people out there who are grateful and thankful for some of the stuff that I'm saying. And hey, I don't think you understand. Like, it gives me goosebumps. I'm so thankful for the people that are even watching this right now and giving me the comments and the encouragement and, you know, all of that kind of beautiful stuff. It's told me that this results in subscribers. It told me that it results in people who are potentially interested in wanting my services or even just a conversation. It doesn't have to be like all of this kind of stuff. It's validating this information. So I can use that information and then say, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. It's the same thing when I jumped into contracting. I took an experiment. I quit my job. Is a bloody big experiment. You have to be ballsy to do that or just in a mood to do it. And I put myself out there. If it failed, then I apply for a permanent 9 to 5. I say like it's flippant and easy, and I don't want to make it seem that way, but that's what I did. That's my story. And so you have to think to yourself, based on your story, what do you want to experiment and give life for at least, you know, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, whatever it may be. Have the discipline to get over what's called lean into this whole idea of delayed gratification, okay, and not try to sort of like open the microwave before the minute, because obviously your rice is going to be soggy. So experimentation is the next phase. And then I guess with all this information you start to garner and stuff, okay, you'll start to understand what the sweet spot is. You must have heard of Ikigai, okay? So they talk about, you know, things that you're good at, things that the world needs. There's all this other stuff as well. I don't even remember it off by heart. I would definitely read the book because I feel like the book gives more context behind the idea of what true Ikigai is, okay? I think there's also a Netflix series as well. But understanding what the sweet spot is, like what is the thing that makes your heart sing? For me, it's speaking. It's like, I'm not even saying public speaking or whatever it may be. It could be educating. It could be advising. It could be mentoring, coaching, speaking on camera, speaking in pub. Like that stuff invigorate. You can even see it. Like I start to get invigorated. I start to get passionate based on, you know, speaking and saying what I need to say. So I need to find things that align to this speaking craft. Now, I'm not like the best speaker. There's no sort of like particular science that I'm flowing or following consciously. I'm just saying what I need to say, okay? To a degree at least anyway. So you need to think to yourself, what are your talents? What are some things that you're good at? What are the things that the market needs? All of this kind of stuff there. What pays well? And if you can find some sweet spot there will be a number of things. Then highlight those things. And what I would suggest you do is list as many ideas as possible. List as many as possible. And then have some sort of like ranking system. So maybe the ranking system is it makes good money. Again, maybe it's those things. I'm good at it. The world needs it. And, you know, I've got skills in it as an example. And you may want to highlight what those things are and then rank those things out of 10 or 5 or whatever it may be and see what sticks out the most. And if there are, let's say, your top 5 and then 2 of them you just don't agree with, see if there's anything else, swap it out and then see how you feel. This is all an experiment. So find that thing where it makes sense. For me, you know, it was more talking about how can I invigorate people to do things that they want to do based on their strengths, their ideals, their passions, all of this kind of stuff there. And for whatever reason, this has popped up within the career space, if you want to call it that, the portfolio career space. And I've said portfolio careers because That suits the sort of person I am. This is why I keep on talking about it. I want people to understand it's less about pursuit and more about creation. Okay. There's also things you can do in terms of like strength finders. So whether this is Gallup strength finders, there's also, if you're into, the whole star sign thing and the astrology thing, and even if you're not, at least you can say, I don't agree with this, and this is what I actually agree with. Maybe there is something known as human design. This is more of the woo-woo stuff. But then outside of that, you've got the ocean model, okay? Or the big five. There is Myers-Briggs. There's all of this different stuff. There's disc profiling. This stuff can give you an idea, but it doesn't define you. It just gives you something to go off. I'm just giving you stuff and tools. I'm not saying you do this in order. I'm just saying this is stuff you can try out so you can start to get an idea of who you are and who you want to become. But above all of this stuff, you have to find ways to sort of face everything and rise. Fear is the thing that is stopping everyone in their tracks. This feeling of a lack of confidence. What is a lack of confidence? You don't believe you have the ability to do what needs to be done. And sometimes you don't even know what done is. So this is why you need to do all of this stuff to understand what done is, at least to have a reason for being, a d'autre raison. Okay, your why, as Simon Sinek talks on. Because if you have that sense of why, and this is the reason why I spoke about all of that stuff. That's defining your why. Then you can define the what and then the how. Okay, the what is what you need to do or what you want to do, what you're aligning yourself towards. And then the how will start to work itself out. Because, again, if you know what your values are, you can make decisions which start to define what that looks like. And so fear stops us in our tracks. This idea of I'm not confident. Why are you not? What are you not confident in? What you're not, because you can break it down. What are the skills that you need to adopt? What environments do you need to be in? Who do you need to speak to? Why are you in this space? And it's all valid stuff. COVID were people's biggest ops. I'm telling you, that COVID there. And I don't want to get all conspiratorial and all that kind of stuff there, but we can't allow COVID to continue to shackle us and keep us in prison. We can't be that ant that thinks it can't get out of that barrier or that boundary. We need to be that ant that succeeds and crosses that boundary and travels distance to get to where we need to get to. And so when it comes to this idea of confidence, you have to have this bulletproof mindset and have this I don't give a F mentality, what anyone thinks. I don't even care how I feel. I'm going to get this done, because it's not about habits. It's not about trying to get a habit. It's about routines and inputs, things I'm going to do again and again and again, intelligently and consistently in order to get a result. So I have to will it. And if it means you have to fake it till you make it in your head, then do that. I'm telling you. There are times, and I know you feel this, where there are times you can't be bothered to do. You think I could be bothered to do this video? I'm ramped up now, but I couldn't be bothered. I was washing the dishes. I was making some chicken wings and all this kind of stuff there. I said, this is long. I can't be bothered. And I started talking. And now I'm in it. I don't know if I'm 20 minutes in, 30 minutes. I don't even know, but I'm talking. Because I told myself I can, I will, and I must. So if you need to do some affirmations, talk to yourself, pray, meditate, go for a walk, go to the gym, tell yourself you can, because if you do it again and again and again, and you do inputs and routines, you're consciously telling yourself you're doing it, rather than relying on this whole idea of habits where in, 52 days or 256 days, you're going to form the habit, because this is what science says, or Charles Duhigg says, or what's his name? Who's the Atomic Habits guy? James Clear says as well. No, be conscious about it. Be awake when you're doing what needs to be done, because at least you can feel it and experience it and know that you've actually done it day in and day out. Sometimes it's just about being at the door, as opposed to trying to create this sense of quality that you may not ready to be able to adopt. So hopefully this all makes sense. So we've got all of this stuff. I don't need to go through mapping it out and all this kind of jazz here, but just think about what logically makes sense and don't be afraid to try those things. For the longest time, I'll probably do another video on this, I wanted to be the personal development guy. I wanted to be the guy who talks about the mindset and all this stuff. And even though I do speak about that from time to time, the reality is the market wasn't really validating me in that way. So I had to pivot. I had to think about what naturally makes sense. And so it was this whole idea of careers or portfolio careers or doing your own thing in a way. So I can kind of mix all of that stuff together. And so I had to think about my own career. If I think about it, you know, I got into this whole space randomly, but without like going down the rabbit hole of what I did. I'll probably do that in another video. It's ended me up here. So you have to think, look back, look at your career and what makes sense and what could you do with that moving forward. Ask ChatGPT. I'm telling you, ChatGPT is my secret fling, you know. I've told my wife already. You may be careful. Because when those robots come out, I'm playing. The point being made is, yeah, you've got a tool that can help you. Okay, that is near close to thinking like a human. So utilize it. But again, focus on the small wins. Focus on long-term vision and everything else. And hopefully you can look back 2 or 5 years time and say, hey, do you know what? I'm so happy that I took the opportunity to bet on myself. I took the opportunity to bet on myself. But it starts now. I remember in 2017-18, I was feeling low. I had a big boy, like debt to pay. I was like 30k plus in debt because I decided I want to try property investing, trading, public speaking, this, that, blah. I took all this money out to get this education and I was super knowledgeable, but I had no accolades to go with it. And I was 30k in debt, spending money I didn't have. And I decided I wasn't going to go anywhere because I calculated it was going to take me 7 years, 5, 6 or 7 years. I don't remember the exact number for me to pay back this debt. What did I do? Told my mum. She was like, hey. And she advised me to go and consolidate my debt into a loan. I consolidated it. It was a low interest rate. Well, it was a high one and then it became a low one a year later because I was making the payments. I then got a new job. I focused on finding a new job or at least a promotion. And then I added an additional £1,000 towards that £550 I was paying each month. Then what happened? It reduced the expectancy of when I was paying that debt back. And I ended up paying it in 18 months forward. What ended up happening, that £1,550 was for me. I could use that money to do what I wanted to do. Get a house, this, that, blah, all of this kind of jazz. But it's because I made the decision to do the hard work and will it. I didn't care if I was crying. I didn't go out. So I'm just saying this because I know where some of you guys are at. It's not easy, but it's possible. It is not easy, but it's possible. And it's understanding that fact. So this is all to say. I'm saying this because I'm getting hungry. I need to service those chicken wings. Okay? I'm saying this to say there is no singular path that makes sense, but only one that makes sense for you. So if any of these ideas have resonated with you, run with them. Adopt them. Try them, experiment with them, but be consistent, be intelligently consistent. And I'm going to leave it there. If there are any topics you'd like to see or anything that resonates with you based on this video, don't forget to comment below, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And of course, if you want to see things centered around portfolio careers, life management, the whole shebang, again, let me know. Anyway, as always, my friends, understand, reach and expand. Peace.